Hi everyone, welcome to the video for giving feeds over a syringe pump. Today I'm going to show you how to use the enteral syringe and the enteral tubing, how to use the pump, what buttons to push to give a feed over a syringe pump. So the first thing that you have to do is get a big 30 or 60 cc syringe, and these are called enteral syringes and enteral tubing. Enteral means passing through the intestines. So you get formula into your syringe and you get your tubing out. Note that when you very first get your tubing out, that it's going to come with a side that's open. And what you have to do is close that with the cap. And you might want to slide closed your clamp. And then this cap needs to come off so that the formula can pass through it. And then you're going to prime your tubing. So you give the syringe a little push until you get formula coming through. And then you're going to twist it eventually onto your NG tube. So there's my formula. So I know I'm finished. This tubing has its own clamp as well that you can slide closed if you want, just to ensure no dripping or anything happens while you're messing with it and putting it on your syringe pump. So the first thing that I'm going to do is turn on my syringe pump with the on button down here. And so you turn it on and hold it for a second and it lights up. And you have to wait for it to load. And then it's checking all its own systems. Anytime that it alarms for you, you're going to press the silence button up here at the top. You're going to load your syringe into it. So on the side, there's this clamp that you have to pull down on to get it to open. And again, I'm going to hit the silent button. This you pull up on, and you can actually swing it backwards so that it holds it open for you. And then you have your syringe, and you're going to place this flange, they call it, in between the white and the gray on here, and it kind of slides into place. And then I'm going to close my other clamps on it, and I'm going to squeeze this and close it up tight. And now it's loaded in there. I did put the tip up towards the top of the syringe rather than the bottom. And that would be for if you're giving human milk. For milk fat, the milk fat rises to the top, and you want to make sure that gets pushed through to the patient because the fat is the most important part. So I'm going to take my syringe tubing and I'm going to weave it through these little things, and that just gives it a little extra securement. And at this point, if I wanted to, I could attach it to the patient. And so I'm going to come over here and I'm going to give a bolus and a continuous feed. But first I'm going to show you where the stop button is and the start button, the silence alarm, and the on off. And this is the back button. So anytime that you want to go back on your menus that you're trying to go through, you can press that button. So notice on the screen it says all these things that have nothing to do with, giving a feed. So I'm actually going to come down here and hit the more button. So on the more button, you'll finally see enteral feeds, and that is giving a feed over a syringe pump. So it is number 7 on the choices. So I'm going to hit 7, and it wants to know, are you giving an enteral feed? I'm going to hit 1 to tell it yes. It wants to know, are you doing breast milk or are you doing formula? And are you doing a bolus or are you doing continuous? And so how do I know the difference? A milliliter per hour is a continuous, just like when we're giving a continuous feed over a feeding pump. The volume over time means I'm going to give a certain volume amount over a very certain amount of time, which is a bolus feed. So for instance, if I want to give this formula feed a volume over time bolus, I would select number 4. And it wants me to verify, is that really what you want? You would come down here and hit yes. It reminds you that it's not for IV use. This is only for NG tubes, G tubes. So you say, yes, I know, thank you. And then it wants to know what kind of syringe are you using. Are you using the brand? Is it a BD Enteral or a Neomed? We tend to stock the BD Enterals. It also says, is this a 60 milliliter syringe? Because that's what it detected by the size. So you're going to confirm that and say, yes, that is what it is. And then it wants to know your milliliter amount. How much of a feed are you giving this patient? So this syringe is up to 30 milliliters is what it's full right now. So we'll just say this patient is getting 30 milliliters. And I would hit enter. And then it wants to know, well, how many hours, minutes, and seconds do you want to give it over? So this is your delivery time. So if I want to give it over 1 hour, I would hit the 1, and notice it's still in the minutes section. So if I hit some zeros, it's going to move it over to the hour section. So now I have 1 hour, 0 minutes. So this is a feed that's going to go over an hour. So I hit enter, and it says confirm your settings. So this is your time to really look. 30 milliliters over 1 hour. It configures a rate for you. You don't really have to worry about that. Just make sure you know that it's 30 milliliters over 1 hour. And you're going to say, yes, I'm confirming that. And then it says, press the start key. So I'm going to come up here and hit the start key. And you know that it's beginning to run once it starts counting down the time, and it's now running through to the patient slowly. And that's how you give a bolus feed. So if I want to stop this feed, say the patient is vomiting, I would come up here and hit stop, and I could even turn off my pump. So I would hold the power button, and it actually says, oh, it wants to do an update. Okay. So I would hit the off button. Let's see if it'll turn off. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to do a continuous feed on the syringe pump. So I went ahead and turned on my pump and waiting for it to load. Most of the time when you're using a syringe pump, you're using it for human milk, giving a breast milk bolus or continuous feed. It's rare that you use it for formula, but occasionally you might for small amounts. So usually you use this whole process with breast milk. And it loves to alarm at you, so just know where that silence button is. So I'm going to do the same thing I did last time. A lot of giving a continuous feed is the same as a bolus. So I'm going to come down here and hit more until I find the enteral feeds, which is number 7. And then it wants to know, am I definitely giving enteral feeds? So I hit 1 for enteral feeds. And it wants to know, am I doing breast milk or formula? This time I'll choose breast milk for a continuous infusion. Number 1 is the continuous infusion, milliliters per hour. And number 2 would be the volume over a certain amount of time bolus. So I'm going to choose number 1. And it wants to confirm that this is what I want to do. So I'm going to hit yes. And then it says double check with 2 caregivers because all breast milk has to be checked before given to the patient by either the caregiver, like the guardian, and a clinical team member, or 2 clinical team members. So it can be 2 PCTs, 2 nurses, a nurse and a parent, etc. So I checked with, a second person, and I hit yes. So again, it wants to know what type of syringe do you have. So I'm going to say BD Enteral, and it's calculating it at a 50 milliliter syringe, and that's just because it's still the same size, but a lot of our syringes are 50s, some of them are 60s. It's just whatever we got from the manufacturer, but it's literally still the same size. It's okay to hit 50 or 60. So I hit confirm, and then my milliliters per hour. Let's say this patient is getting 10 milliliters per hour. So I'm making sure that's correct, and then I'm going to hit enter. If I had messed up, I can always clear it out back to a blank screen. So I'm going to do 10, enter. And then it wants you to confirm your settings, that your rate is 10 milliliters per hour, and that that's your syringe. So you hit yes. And then it wants you to hit the start button if you're ready to go. So then you hit start, and it starts going. Again, if you needed to stop your infusion or something happened, the tube came out, you could always hit stop, and you can always turn off your syringe pump. If you don't turn it off, it will beep at you after a minute of no activity. So I'm going to hold it down to hit off, and then you're off if you hold it down long enough. If you don't, it asks you to hold it down again. And that's all that you really have to do for that.